start. Excellent. Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome from wherever you're joining in. Thank you for joining us for this edition of the online MuleSoft Meetup. We can move on to the next slide. My name is Royston Lobo, and I'm a technical architect in the customer success team here at MuleSoft. I also have the honor of being one of the co-leaders for this meetup group. So I co-lead the APAC time zone, which primarily is Singapore and Sydney. I also have colleagues all around the world who help coordinate the other time zones. So we have Angel in EMEA, and we have Sandeep and Manik who help put sessions together for the American time zones. If you'd like to get in touch with us on anything to do with the meetup, you can click on the meetup page that we have and contact the organizer. If you would like to be notified about future events, you can click on that link on the screen, and you'll be able to get notified every single time we publish a new meetup, which is roughly about 2 to 3 times a month. If we can move on to the next slide, please. Just some etiquette for today. There is a chat function available in the meetup, so most of you are already posting your welcome messages. Thank you very much for doing that. If you have any comments during the session, the chat function is the best place for that. However, if you have specific questions for the speakers, I strongly suggest using the link on the top of the slide that you see over there. It's also the first post in the meetup chat. I'll post that link regularly. This is going to be our curated Q&A link for the session today. So it's an easy way for you to see what questions are coming in. You can even vote on somebody else's questions. And if you are on a laptop, it might be a good idea to have a separate tab open with that Q&A link so you can see what other people are asking. As usual with our meetup group, all the slides and recordings will be made available within 24 hours. So you don't need to take lots of notes today. We publish our recordings on our YouTube page, and all of the content will be available on the event page as well. So that's usually my job within a few hours of the event to get all of that ready. All right, if we can move on, I have a few announcements for the community before we get started with our presentation. Just things that are relevant and top of mind. You may know that we are not the only meetup that happens all around the world. We have meetups that were historically city-based, but many of them run online as well. And so we have over 150 groups where you can join from anywhere. We are in the global group, so this one runs across different time zones. But if you want something that's a bit more city-specific, or maybe in a language of your choice, you can look through on meetups.mulesoft.com/events to find out what's happening. If you can move on to the next slide, please. The MuleSoft on-demand webinars are currently running. And so if you're interested in Center for Enablement space, so this tends to be more appropriate for platform owners, there are a couple of webinars available for that. So if you are not interested yourself, you may know somebody else that is. These webinars are free, and they come from people who've got subject matter expertise, and some of them are in my team at MuleSoft as well. And so just have a look through the description. If they look like there's something that you're interested in, when you get a copy of the slides, just click through to the link, or I might be able to paste them in the chat so that you can follow them through. So a reminder, they're free to attend. They're coming up either on demand or on specifically towards the end of the match. Next slide, please. I am excited to announce that the MuleSoft Mentors program is accepting applications. So for anyone who is not familiar with the MuleSoft Mentor program, these are more engaged members of our community, some of whom may be actually on this meetup today. And so typically you would need to have at least one MuleSoft certification and looking to contribute to the community in many different ways. There are benefits to becoming a mentor, including recognition from the ecosystem. And the best part is that it is free to apply and nominate others as well. So the link is quite simple, mulesoft.com/mentors. Click through, you'll be able to see whether it's something that you're interested in. And if you need any support in that space, either reach out to me or reach out to our developer relations team. I'd definitely love to see more mentors coming in from the APAC region, where I am in, but we could always do with more mentors across the world. Right, moving on to the Friends of Max. For those of you who are in the know, we have Friends of Max videos on a number of topics every month. And so I just wanted to call out that there are some new videos that have come out recently. One of them that you might be interested in is the Transit Gateway setup video. So if you're using Cloud Hub and you're looking to migrate from either your VPC peering or your VPN to using AWS Transit Gateway, that video would be quite helpful to help you understand what the change involves. There's also other useful videos like ones on dependency management and how to get better on that, which practically every MuleSoft developer should be interested in. On the right-hand side, you'll see that we have some videos that were very popular in February, which gives you an indication of what you might be interested in as well. Next slide, please. I also wanted to call out that we have new connectors in Exchange, which is a common occurrence every month. So the ones with links on them, those are brand new. And we also have some Composer connectors as well. So if you're interested, as usual, head to Anypoint Exchange, look up the connectors you're interested in, and if you have the opportunity to use them, we'd love for you to do so, and pass on any feedback or ideas to the rest of the community. There is a blog post which summarizes all the new connectors if you're interested in as well, and so you might get some examples of how you can use them. All right. That concludes all the announcements I have. So once again, all the links will be on the slides, which are going to be published later today. I will also put some of them in the chat. I have the pleasure now of introducing Elsa and Anant from MuleSoft, who will be running with our topic for today. So Anant, Elsa, over to you, and thank you very much in advance for doing this for us.
Thank you, Royston, and look forward to new mentors joining the community from the JPAC region. In today's session, we will be looking at an interesting integration feature available in Salesforce, and that is the streaming APIs. Uh, as you can guess from the name, there are a number of those APIs, not just one. And in this session, we will deep dive into some of these. Now, these are asynchronous event type integrations, which are not very different from messaging tools that we are already familiar with, such as Anypoint MQ or JMS. Let's start with some introductions. Both Elsa and I work at MuleSoft in the professional services organization and are closely involved in customer engagement, specifically in the ANZ region. Now, let's look at what's lined up for the agenda for today. We will start by giving an introduction to the 4 streaming APIs, then look at the support that is available in MuleSoft for these APIs, followed by a demo on one of these streaming APIs, and finally end with a Q&A session. Because of the duration of this session and the content that is to be covered, we will be taking all the questions only at the end. But I encourage everyone who has a question to start sending it to the link that we have shared related to question and answers. So without further ado, let's get started. Now, as I said, there are a number of streaming APIs. We will give an introduction on all of these streaming APIs. There are 4 streaming APIs that Salesforce currently has. Streaming APIs started with generic events, and they have grown over time. It went from generic events to push topics to platform events, and finally to change data capture events, which are the newest addition to streaming APIs. Most of today's presentation is going to focus on the second generation of streaming events that we have highlighted in this diagram. Uh, that is because that is where most of the innovation is happening in the Salesforce space. While the first generation APIs are still supported, they are uh, they are not an area where Salesforce is investing a lot in terms of development and adding more features, but they are still supported, as I said. Uh, Another thing to note is that generic events are related to platform events in the sense that the features that is supported by platform events is similar to the features that generic events supported, and push topics are similar to change data capture. Now, these four APIs are a little different from each other, but they are built around a shared model. Uh, and this common model has some uh, similarities. They follow a shared technology, that is, they are built on publish, subscribe, or event-driven architecture. As I said earlier, this is something that we are all familiar with, where publishers publish messages to event bus, and multiple one or more subscribers can subscribe to those messages. Uh, and they also use push technology to get events sent from the server to the client without the client looking or polling for updates on a regular basis. Another interesting capability is called the replay capability, wherein you can rewind and replay events in case you miss some events. The replay capability is limited to a certain window or a duration, which we will look at in later slides. Another thing which is common to these streaming APIs is that they cater to a common set of use cases. Uh, the first use case is real-time notifications.
And I'm sorry to
P,
interrupt you. Just a,
yeah,
minor change. The Q&A link looks disabled to us as the audience. Are you able to just toggle that on and off on your end, just so we can confirm that
okay,
everyone's
yeah.
just the presenter tool is just on and off.
I did that just now. Can you please check again?
Sure.
I think it generated probably a new one.
Oh, no, it still shows up as closed. Is there a section that says still accepting responses, accepting questions?
Questions appear here is what it is saying. Let me close that altogether, and so let me limit it to. Can you just try Royston, just you at your end? Because
Sure.
I've limited it to salesforce.com.
No, it still says Q&A session is closed.
Okay. It is showing as open at my end. Uh,
And it definitely says accepting questions is on. Yep.
yeah, accepting questions is on
Yeah.
because that's why I'm toggling off and on.
Yes. I think it might be
Uh,
a back-end issue. I think the simplest way would be just stop share, reload the presentation, and then it will generate a new link again. Um,
okay, I've stopped the sharing.
yeah, just refresh your slides.
Okay. Can you see my screen right now?
Uh, Not yet.
Okay, one second. I've refreshed my slides. I will. Okay. Audience tools. Start new. Uh, can you see the slides now? No, right?
Not yet.
Okay.
No. Yeah, yeah. Just for our audience, we'll give it one try, and if that doesn't work, then we can use the chat.
One second. Uh, Share screen from tab, command, share. Okay. Can you let me know whether you can see the screen again?
Yes, I can.
And start new on anyone.
Yep,
Okay.
it's come through. I'm just gonna type the link in. Yep, it's open for me. I'm just checking incognito, and it's open for me as well. Yep, so I think you're good to proceed. Thank you.
Okay. Uh, there are some common use cases that these streaming APIs cater to. The first one is real-time notifications. Uh, Platform events can be used to send notifications to different systems or subscribers to act on custom triggers created in Salesforce. The second is process automation. Process automation is all about triggering downstream processes based off Salesforce data changes. For example, if a shipment application sends a shipped status event, the ERP system could accept this event and respond to it by recognizing a revenue on the order. Similarly, you may want the marketing cloud to subscribe to that same event and send a custom email notification to the customer. Data replication is where CDCs, which is change data capture, can be used for real-time data synchronization between Salesforce and external systems. CDCs capture the delta of the Salesforce data, whether for new records or for changed records. Another interesting use case is audit and compliance. This is typical of BFSI or healthcare systems where you may be subject to very strict audit and compliance requirements. You might be required to show a tracking history of all the data changes that have happened in your organization on particular records, and you might need to store them in a data lake. So these are the use cases which these streaming APIs are typically used for. Now coming to the coming back to the publish subscribe model that I spoke of earlier, in the middle there is a messaging bus. Now this messaging bus used to be part of the Salesforce core platform, but then recognizing its key value and the use cases that it delivers, it was moved outside as an independent message bus and at some point by Salesforce. And this message bus has a number of channels, as you can see. The channels are nothing but message types. They are pretty much like S objects in Salesforce. The first thing that has to be done for a communication to happen is that the consumers or event consumers need to subscribe to those channels, and the second step is for the event producers to publish to these channels carried out, and the uh, publishing events can be consumed or sent out to these channels. Now, one thing to note is that both event producers and consumers can be Salesforce or third-party systems. If you would remember, one thing I had mentioned is that one important capability within the platform is around the replay capability, where you could replay events from the past if you have lost those messages. Now, this happens uh, uh, with a key feature which is available in the product, which is called as the message durability. With message durability, messages which are sent to the event bus are stored on the event bus for specific durations of time. As you can see here, the second generation events are stored for 72 hours or 3 days, and the first generation events are stored for 24 hours or 1 day for it to be replayed. Now, I would pass into my colleague, Elza, who would take us through platform events.
Thank you, Anand. So platform. We are going to look at platform events from a Salesforce perspective, but also from the support that MuleSoft provides for platform events. So what you can see here is a screenshot of what the platform event definition looks like in Salesforce. So platform events are considered first-class objects in Salesforce. To custom events, but while a custom event has, and you may already know this, has the __ C ending, a platform event will have that _ E as an ending. Platform events have both standard fields and custom fields, and the fields are strongly typed. So that, in combination with defining an event schema, allows for much better control and validation at the subscriber level. One of the most important fields as part of the standard fields is the replay ID, which gets assigned to the platform event when the event to the subscribers. This replay ID in more details in the next slides and also as part of the demo. One thing to remember platform events in Salesforce is that you cannot query them using SQL, or you cannot see them in the UI like in lists or reports. There are ways to see them by querying other objects, but not in the usual way that you would query other objects. If we can go to the next slide. So we have seen in the previous slide what the platform event definition looks like in Salesforce, and now we want to see how can we publish platform events. So there are two ways. One is internally from within the Salesforce platform, and the other one is externally by leveraging the Salesforce APIs. Internally, we can use programming basically to publish platform events, so that's Apex code, or we can use more declarative ways of publishing by leveraging process builder and flows. On the right hand side, you can actually see a piece of Apex code is just a trigger on a contact that creates a platform event and then sets some fields on the platform, publish that event to the event bus. When we publish platform events, it's very important to select the behavior that we want. So it could be either publish after commit or publish immediately. So when we say publish after commit, basically the event is published only action commits successfully. So that this is really important behavior if we want the subscribers to receive those events if the transaction is unsuccessful. Or if for the subscriber is very important to receive some data that only gets committed as part of that transaction. The other behavior the name implies means that the event is being published only when the call executes, but it doesn't care whether the transaction was successful or not. So this is more commonly used for logging purposes. Next slide, please, Anant. So as we mentioned earlier, we can either use Apex code or more declarative methods to publish platform events from within the Salesforce platform. And here we are looking at a process builder. Go into the details as part of this slide, as we will this in our demo. And now we'll be passing on back to my colleague Anand to walk us through change data capture.
Thank you, Elsa. Now we look at change data capture. As we had said initially that there are 4 platform events, and our focus today will be on 2 of those, platform events and change data capture, which are part of the current streaming APIs. Now, we can think of change data capture as part of a real-time data replication process for the cloud. Now, data replication can be thought of as the following 3 stages, which make part of that process. The first is the initial or day 0 copy of the entire data set to the external system. The second step is continuous synchronization of new or updates to the external system. And the third is reconciliation of duplicate data between the 2 systems. Now, change data capture is the continuous synchronization of the replication process. That is step 2. wherein delta of changes or new updates are sent from one system to the another. Uh, One interesting thing to note is with Salesforce, change data capture publishes events for changes in Salesforce records corresponding to create, update, delete, or undelete operations. And a typical change event lifecycle for change data capture includes data change events being published or captured at the moment they happen, and these events are published to a durable event stream such as the event bus in Salesforce, and the subscribing systems listening to these event streams and consuming them and taking necessary actions. Now this these three steps in the life cycle is what is described in the diagram which shows up on this slide, wherein initially if account record has the name as Acme, and if someone comes and changes this name for this record to Acme 2, this may happen from the UI, Salesforce UI, then an update takes place in the Salesforce database, and when that update happens, a change data capture is triggered for that updated record, and that is sent to the event bus, and the external system captures it and takes the necessary action. Now, uh, enabling change data capture within Salesforce is very easy. All you have to do is you have to go to uh, you have to go to setup and home and look for integrations change data capture. That presents you a list of S objects which are supported for change data capture. Not all standard S objects are supported, but it is a growing list of S objects which are supported for change data capture, and all custom subjects are supported out of the box. So you can select the subject that you're interested in, as is highlighted here, and move them using the arrow buttons to the selected entities uh, list and click on save. Once you do that, the change data capture is enabled for that particular subject. So all create, update, delete, and undelete operations will then start being published to the event bus. Now, you might ask, what is the difference between platform events and change data capture? Apart from conceptually, sharing the differences in terms of the use cases that they are best suited for, there are also differences in terms of how the events are published and the events are built. Uh, on the left-hand side, you will of this screen, you will see platform events, sample platform events, and on the right-hand side, we have the change data capture. They have some common elements such as a schema and also a channel at the end. The difference is that with the channel is that the channel for platform event starts with a slash event with followed by the event name, whereas the uh, channel name for a change data capture begins with slash data followed by the a subject name followed by change event. Uh, Now both of them have a payload, but the payload for platform event contains all the fields that you have selected while building or creating that platform event, whereas the payload for change data capture differs based on what operation is being carried out. For example, if it is an update, as it is the case in this particular case, we get only the fields which were updated. In this particular case, last modified date and phone. How do we know that these were the fields that were changed? If you go down a little, you will see that there is a changed fields element with phone number and last modified date, and 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 those are the fields that come up now. Another thing with change data capture is that we have the entity name which comes up, which is the account type for this particular account. Uh, as we had discussed that each one of these events has a replay ID associated with it, that is also shown in these events. So I'll move on to the next slide, which is again on MuleSoft Salesforce connector support, and I will pass it to Elsa.
Thank you, Anand. From a MuleSoft perspective, we do have the MuleSoft Salesforce that allows us to interact with the streaming APIs. And for that, we have 4 different type of sources that we can leverage. So we have the subscribe channel listener, subscribe topic listener, and then we have the replay ones, the replay channel listener and topic listeners. And I'll briefly explain what the difference between this is. So wherever we see topics, so topic is used for that first generation push topics, and channel is being used for first generation generic events, but also for second generation platform events and change data capture on. In subscribe and replay is that if you use a subscribe listener, your application will only be receiving events as long as it's being subscribed and listening to that channel. While with replay, you also have the capability to replay past events. So basically go back in the messaging pass and retrieve events that you might have missed. On the right hand side, we do see what this configuration looks like on the listener. So this will be a replay channel listener, and as we can see, we have the streaming channel, which if we are using change data capture will begin with /data. But if we're using platform events, if we are subscribed to platform events, we'll begin with a /event. And we do have a number of options for replay ID, and we will be looking at those in the next slide, please, Anand. So for replay ID, the MuleSoft Salesforce connector provides 3 main options, all from replay ID and only. So with the all option, the subscriber will be receiving all the events that are available in the messaging bus within that retention window. So if we refer to the picture that we see here, let's imagine that events with 1 and 2 are outside that retention window. So if we select all, then our subscriber, once up and running, will be receiving all the events that are in the messaging bus with replay ID from 3 to 8, and also any new events that happen after the subscription, because we said that 1 and 2 are outside that retention window. If we select the option from replay ID, let's say replay ID with number 5, then we would be receiving only events with a replay ID greater than that value, so number 6, 7, 8, and also any new events that happen after the subscription. And the last option for replay ID is only new, and if new, then we will be receiving only events that are broadcasted after the client subscription, so no events from the past. And next, we will be a look at a demo for platform events. So if we can move on to that. So first we will be looking at what platform events look like in Salesforce. So in order to create a platform event, we can go to setup and just look for platform events. And we will soon see what the screen for creating platform event looks like, but I already have a platform event in place, so we will be leveraging that particular platform event. So when you want event, we just select new platform event. We have to give an API name will be assigned with that __e, and also we have to select that published behavior we about in our slides, and most events will be published after commit, so only when successfully. As I said, I already have a platform event defined. This is for new contact, so it's called new contact notification. You'll notice the __e, and we have those standard fields and custom fields, with the replay ID being one of the most important ones. Custom fields, I have defined a contact ID and the contact name, and we will see how we can set those fields when we actually publish them. For publishing the event, I have chosen a declarative method. So we are using the process builder in Salesforce. So it's a very process that is triggered on when a contact. So when a new contact gets created in Salesforce, this will trigger, and it will publish a new event of type new contact notification, and it will set the two fields: the contact ID, the ID of the event newly created, and the contact name basically will be a concatenation of the contact name, first name and last name. So this is the Salesforce side of things. In terms of the Mule application, we have a very simple Mule application with two flows: an acquisition flow that uses that replay channel listener to receive new platform events, logs them, and then sends them to a queue, and a process flow that takes the event off the queue, applies a base, and does some logging. So here we can imagine, more complex logic where we send something to another system based on the new contact notification that we have received from Salesforce. So now we are just gonna test that behavior that we mentioned in our previous slide. So we want to see what happens if we have this option all for our replay ID and we run this application. So basically what we said with the all option, we should expect to see all the events that are available within the messaging bus, as long as they are in that retention window. And as Anand mentioned, platform events and CTC, the retention period is of 72 hours. So once the application is up and running, we should see a bunch of events being logged, and we're going to have a quick look at the timestamps on those events to see the window. One thing to keep in mind about replay IDs is that they are not necessarily contiguous, and I'll explain that quickly. So going back to the timestamps, as we can see, the most of the events are from the 22nd of February, which is when the demo was recorded. But as we look at the events that we have received, we will also notice a few from the 20th and the 21st. So basically, we have that retention window of 72 hours. And we are able to get all those events from the past based on that option of all replay IDs. The next option we're going to look at is only new. So once we put this in place on our listener, we should only expect events that happen after the subscription. So no events from the past. And as I was mentioning earlier, for consecutive, the replay ID is not necessarily contiguous. So just keep in mind that, for instance, you might have a replay ID with a value 100, followed by a replay ID with 110. They will be incremental in value, so you can rely on that, but they're not necessarily contiguous or consecutive. So we now have the option only new in place. And as we can see, there's no events being logged. There's nothing from the past that we are retrieving from the messaging bus. And the application is up and running. We are listening to that contact notification channel. So we are going to go into Salesforce, and we're just going to create a new contact by setting a few basic fields. So like first name, last name, email. And once we save this in Salesforce, we know that our process builder is gonna kick off, and a new event will be pushed to the messaging bus. So going back to our application, we actually see that we have received that new event for the contact that we have just created in Salesforce. We're gonna make a note of that replay, this new event that we have received, and going back onto our listener, we're going to select the option from replay ID, and we will put that replay to the listener. And our application is stopped at the moment, so we've stopped the application, and we are going back into Salesforce new contact. So with this option from replay ID, that we will only be receiving events that have a replay ID with a value greater than the one that we have specified on our listener. So we're gonna, as I said, the application was not running. So basically our listener was offline, but we have that option to say, no, I want to go back into the messaging bus and retrieve all events with with a replay ID greater than the one that I have put on my listener. So once the application is up and running, we should see a new event that we are receiving. And that event is for the contact that we just, and unfortunately, probably you can't see on the screen right now, but the replay ID for that new contact is greater than the replay ID that we have put on our listener. So that's why we are able to receive this event. One last option that we're going to is checkbox to resume from the last replay ID, which is very important and allows us to receive messages. For instance, if our application goes offline and we don't want to lose messages, we should be able to retrieve those messages while the application was offline. So I just put that in place and I'm running the application at the moment. So basically this option to resume from last replay ID leverages an object store behind the scenes. So in my case, it will be my local object store. So we should be seeing once the application is running, we should be seeing only events that have a replay ID greater than whatever was saved in my object store prior to running this. And as we can see, although we had the option, we went back to that option all, we only see 2 events arriving, which are the events for the 2 contacts that we just have created, because the replay ID in my object store was the one that was saved from a previous run. Created some new contacts in Salesforce, I've generated some new messages, and those messages have a replay ID greater than what was saved in my object store. So now that we've run the application, the new replay ID, the greatest replay ID for those 2 events, will be saved onto the object store. And when we run the application one more time, because we haven't created new contacts in Salesforce, new messages, we will not be seeing arriving because the replay ID in object store is basically the latest, and we don't have any events with the replay ID greater than that one. So as we can see, the application is up and running. We are successfully subscribed. There's nothing being logged. One last thing we're going to do is we're and create one new contact in Salesforce. Finish testing this replay from the last resume from the last replay ID. So now we know we have something in the object store, and when our application should resume from that value that we have in our object store. So in the meantime, we have created a new contact in Salesforce. We know a new event was triggered, and one last time, see the logging. And as we can see, we do receive a new event, which is the event associated with the last contact Salesforce, but it is only that event. So here, that replay option that has been set back to all has been ignored, and we have just the last replay ID that was object store. One other thing to note here is that if, for instance, with this resume from last replay ID, we are going outside that retention window of 72 hours for platform events, then the listener is going to fall back onto that option. So in our case, it's going to fall back onto that all option, but it's only going to give us events within that retention window. So outside our retention window and our listener has been offline for more than 72 hours, we will events that are outside those 72 hours, but we should be able to get everything that happened within that. And that concludes our demo. Thank you, everyone. And I think now we want to move to the Q&A session.
Hey, thanks, Elza. So I'll take the first question. The first question is, does change data capture have a limit on the number of fields that can be tracked or captured? Now, change data capture has a limit of 1 MB per event. So it's not just the number of fields. So if you have a number of custom fields, which takes the field length beyond the 1 MB size, then it will have issues. It is also with the length of each field, even if you don't have a number of fields, but if you have smaller number of fields, but the length of each field is very high, and then you hit the 1 MB size, then also you will have some issues there. You'll hit the limits. I hope that answers that question. We'll move to the next question now. The next question is about the order or sequences of events to be guaranteed. Uh, Now, to guarantee the order or sequence of events, as Elsa had shown uh, in her demo, that there are two phases, the way we see it, of handling, streaming APIs. The first is the acquisition phase, wherein you just have that replay listener you publish to Anypoint MQ. And the second is to have another listener for Anypoint MQ and then have the processing logic next to it. So what you can do to ensure that the order or sequence is guaranteed is the acquisition phase can work with a max concurrency of 1, and then you can take those events one at a time. And once you publish to Anypoint MQ, that Anypoint MQ queue can be a FIFO queue, and that will help you ensure that sequencing is maintained.
Yeah, and I just want to add, sorry, Anand, because this will probably answer the next question as well. So, based on what you said, that is basically the best practice recommendation, to not have that listen to the events run on multiple workers, multi-threaded, because the Salesforce connector is not to work with that kind of setup. So that's why, as Anand was saying, it's best to have that acquisition flow, and you keep that running on a single worker or with a max concurrency of 1. And then you can implement, multi-threaded setup once you publish to the queue. And you might see that there is a primary node setup on that, on the Salesforce connector, but we have seen issues with that. So just keep in mind, best to run your acquisition flow on a single worker, or if you really need to run it on multiple workers, then the other option would be using an idempotent filter any potential duplicate messages.
Yeah. Do you want to take the next question, Elsa, which is redelivery policy already implemented in replay channel listener?
So basically, that replay ID allows you to retrieve the events from the messaging bus as long as they are within that retention window. So you could have a reconnection strategy on your connector, but if you want to retrieve an event more than once, you would have to basically play with that replay ID. So you would have to specify, like, once you if you want to get a specific event and you are aware of the replay ID value, then you would have to play with that replay ID to get an event more than once.
Okay. Is it possible to get the demo video for watching it again? The whole session, including the presentation and the video, will be posted on YouTube. So I think, Royston, you can add in here. You will send out a notification to all the participants once that is available, or can you share the channel that they should subscribe to?
Sure. That we use for all of our videos. The easiest way is to just visit that event page in about 6 hours time. I usually aim for 6 hours, but within 24 hours, all the contents, so that slides, recordings, everything will be published there. If you still need something after that as an audience member, you can contact the organizers and I'll see what I can do for you. But yeah, the recording will be available in its entirety, which usually makes most people's use case. Thanks so much.
Okay, thank you. The next question is how many event listeners can be configured in a Mule application? Now, I've not seen any limits to that. I've seen multiple, customers implement multiple event listeners in the same mail application. Elsa, have you seen any limits as such?
No, no. So basically, you should be able to configure as many as you want and listen to different. Obviously, listening to different.
Uh, does the listener use the object store? Is it configurable persistence or
Yeah,
in memory?
I can take this one and answer. So yes, the as we have mentioned, the behind the scene, the replay listener is the one that allows you to keep track of those replay IDs. So yes, it will leverage the object store, and in Cloud Hub you can go with object store v2, and you can choose in memory or persistent. If you're using Mule 4, while in Mule 3 you still have the option to use Object Store v1, and locally Mule will be leveraging the Mule Object Store by default.
Okay, what will happen in case of any errors while consuming events? Now, as you have seen in the demo, there are two phases. One is the acquisition phase and the second is the processing phase. And if you recall that the acquisition phase doesn't have any code other than to publish to Anypoint MQ. So that is a pretty simple code. Not a lot should go wrong unless you lose a connection to Anypoint MQ, which is a bigger issue. On the processing side, once things flow to Anypoint MQ, then then it is a standard, error handling retry logic that you would have with Anypoint MQ queues because that is all built-in functionality within Anypoint MQ. You can have a max retry of up to 10, and then you can pass it to some dead letter queue for someone to look at it. Anything you want to add to that, Ilza?
No, that's basically it. And yeah, that replay ID functionality is there to kind of help you of stuff. So you can always implement even something more complex than what's already available on the connector to make sure that you're retrieving any events that you might be losing.
Okay. The next question is, can the behavior of the connector be changed dynamically? I think you're asking whether we can switch over from replay ID to all to only new. We have not tried this, but you can give it a shot. But I can't imagine scenarios where you would have to change that dynamically. How about if it's in runtime fabric in clustered mode? So, so as we said, the acquisition phase needs to run on one worker, right? So, if you run it on multiple workers, what happens is that the same message is subscribed to by two different applications running on two different workers, and then you have duplicate messages. So if you can avoid duplicate processing by using idempotent messages or running the acquisition phase on only one worker, or you can have third-party solutions to that, which is handling it to a through a database or through a transactional messaging tool such as JMS, wherein duplicates are filtered out. So those are the things that you can carry out there. The last question is, okay, one second. Oh no, there are more questions. Okay. The last question, yeah. Does object store keep track of each listener replay ID? Is key configurable? Do you want to take that, Elsa?
Yes, so I haven't really tested like with multiple listeners myself. Would be yes, it should be able to keep track of the different replay IDs.
And is key configurable?
As far as I know, no, you don't have an option to say for this particular listener I want to use this particular listener another key. So that's something that happens behind the scenes.
Okay. If there are no more questions, then I'll pass it back to Roshan. There's just one more thing we wanted to add. Do you want to speak on the references, Elsa?
Yes. So because you will be getting, or you already have the slides available, we thought it would be very useful to include some of the references. They're mostly MuleSoft or Salesforce references that you can have a look at to get more details about the streaming APIs, the latest feature on the Salesforce connector. So the moment I've included the link to the latest version, which is 10.14 of the Salesforce connector. And also there's some information in there about, limits, what sort of limits you might be expecting from a Salesforce platform perspective. But when it comes to limits, probably when you're working on a project, if you have someone from Salesforce available, it's always best to double check those daily limits to make sure that you take that into account into your implementation.
Finally, we want to say thank you. Thank you for participating in this online meetup and listening to what we had to share. Through your questions and through your participations, we also get to learn a lot. So thank you from our side. Over to you,
Thank you.
Roshan.
I just wanted to address that there is one more question in the chat, reliability and guaranteed delivery. So there have been ongoing updates on that Salesforce connector. So as I mentioned, the latest version is 10.14. So we encourage you to use the latest version of the Salesforce. Have been ongoing updates, especially around that replay ID and resume from last replay ID capability to ensure avoiding message loss. So yes, the connector should support that out of the box, but I encourage you to use the latest version as well.
Great. Is that all, Elsa?
Yes, that was all. Thank you.
Excellent. All right, a huge thank you to Anant and Elsa, to the both of you, for taking the time to prepare and present. We've had obviously a number of people keenly interested from all around the world tuning in for this one, and you can see how engaged they are just with the number of questions coming through. So clearly, it's useful and valuable knowledge for the community, and really appreciate you taking the time to share that with us. For our community members, if you appreciated what you learned today or would like to say thank you, the most effective way of doing that is to actually fill up the feedback form. There will be a feedback form coming to your email roughly about an hour from now. All it takes is for a simple, click on it, say thank you, Elsa, thank you, Anant. I will be promised to share it with them if you promise to give us feedback. So I encourage you, obviously, if you have any suggestions on improvements, that's also a great way to communicate that to me and the leadership team for the meetup group. With that, we are at the top of the hour, and we are done for our content for today. Once again, thank you to our speakers. Thank you to you as our audience and our participants. A reminder that all the content, including the slides, will be available on the event page within 24 hours. If you have any suggestions for us, please include that in your feedback, or alternatively, you can contact the organizer on the meetup page if you want to discuss something different, for example, potentially speaking on this group as well in the future. Until next time, I hope you stay safe and well, and we look forward to having you again. Bye.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.